You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm Brian Call. I'm joined by Brad Hunt. We're on another little road trip here. We're going to record a show talking about the things we're going to do to ensure our bear hunting success this spring. We've done our scouting, and we have our plans in place for where we're going to go, and we kind of have that dialed. We've dealt with the snow line and all that, so we're not going to get into the actual tags and scouting and that kind of thing. What we are going to talk about is kind of all the other stuff.
Yep,
preparation. So I think we're going to start. We took a bunch of notes, things that we're going to do, and let's start with talking about sort of our loadout, right?
Yep.
We're planning to go very, very remote into some deep
with no llamas or goats.
No llamas or goats, which we're a little spoiled. We've had the luxury of packing with goats or llamas for the past few years in the springtime. But goats and llamas come with babysitting.
There's an advantage, but a penalty as well.
You also have to clear a trail.
Yep. You're in Grizz country. Somebody has to tend to the llamas throughout the day at some point.
Yeah.
Almost always. So
this year, we really want to go old school, real old school, and just everything on our backs, expedition, 10 or 12 days, going really deep. We're planning to hike in. We're bringing rafts, and we plan to float out.
Yep.
And the float out, it varies. Some of these, the water we'll be in really isn't conducive to rafting, so it'll help shave, on a long 10-mile exit, we'll be able to raft probably half of that.
Yeah.
So probably raft about 5 miles of it, but the rest we can't. It'll be stretches, which we have pre-scouted using some of the satellite imagery, looking at the rivers and knowing them because we've been there and seen them with our eyes in the past.
Yeah. Yep.
We have these exit spots where we know we need to get out of the boat or we'll die because the rapids are too nasty. But it definitely, there's a big difference between packing your full camp plus your bear, hide, and skull out of 10 miles versus 5 miles.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of places scouted that are closer to the 15 to 18 mile mark too.
Sometimes, yeah.
So.
Yeah. There are stretches where it's like the rafting really helps for certain. Even if you only float a mile,
right?
It goes by so fast. That float can be over in a matter of minutes. And if you were to hike that, with that load, it's
1 mile less wear and tear on the body.
Yeah, and you add that up over a few days. And our rafts are only 5 pounds.
Yep.
We're running the alpaca caribou raft. That's 5 pounds of extra weight on our way in for the luxury of, it's truly not just 5, because when you add a life jacket and you add a paddle, you're more like 7 pounds.
Yep.
However, it's worth it. It's worth that 7-pound penalty on the way in to shave 5 miles of heavy packing out.
Yeah.
Cutting that in half. So with that, though, we want to make sure that we have we really have to break down our gear and fine tune it. Make some decisions on camera gear, especially as we film these things.
Right.
What can we truly bring with us, and what are we going to leave behind?
What can we ditch?
Because with that kind of hike in, we're going to make some sacrifices on lenses, on tripods, heavy tripods, or go lighter. We're going to make some sacrifices on how many batteries, how much we can really film, just everything.
Yep. like an example, a cook stove. There's no reason for us both to pack a cook stove. We have the backup of a hot fire.
Yes.
We got the stove, the wood stove.
So to ensure that we're successful on this hunt, we're getting our gear list put together now.
Yep.
And we're making it as light and efficient as possible for the next month and a half or 2 months to figure out what we absolutely need and what we can leave behind.
Yep.
We have mules as well. We have caribou rafts and we have mules, which are a couple pounds heavier.
2 pounds difference.
The caribou's 5 pounds, the mule is 7. Now you add 7 plus the paddle and the life jacket, now you're at, instead of a 7-pound total weight, you're at a 9-pound total weight.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of decisions need to be made because every few pounds starts to stack up really quick.
Yeah.
Our typical 10-day backpack hunt, we have a 30-pound base weight for our camp.
Yep.
And I have notes here. When you add in the rifle, hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, you can do that by shopping at Stealthy Hunter, a great partner of ours. They sell rifle covers, which we use on every single hunt. They sell glassing pads. They sell supplements. They got CBD gummies, other products over there. Check it out. Make sure you use the code GRITTY. And now, back to the show. When you add in the rifle, it's usually
about 37 to 38 pounds, something like that, I think.
Correct.
With the rifle.
8 pounds on the highest end when you consider bullets, scope, bipod, the rifle, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
You're around 8 pounds. If Brad and I split the load, we're somewhere around 10 or 12 pounds for camera equipment each.
Yep.
And our base camp, that's our sleep system, our cook stoves, our shelters, all of that. That's around 30 pounds. So that's 72-pound load that we got to hike 10 to 15. Like we might go 10 miles in, but then we might go 5 miles east or west.
Yeah.
After we went 10 miles north, we'll cover mountains. We'll go where the game takes us. And so it gets pretty heavy.
Yeah. And that weight does not include water. It includes, I think, like my setup kind of includes a 1 liter water bottle. That's yep. On my belt. That's it. The rest of it's all additional weight when you have to pack water. And that gets heavy.
So we'd like to experiment with these numbers, get them down a little bit. Maybe camp isn't quite 30 pounds because if we decide to bring a lighter weight cook stove,
yep,
and we only bring 1 instead of 2,
yep,
we decide to bring maybe a Dyneema shelter instead of sil nylon, and we split that between us.
Yep.
We bring a very small, the lightest weight wood stove we can manage, right? Maybe we don't go with anything but the smallest, small.
Yeah, we bring 1 tarp because we're going to be together anyway.
Yep.
No reason getting like a Dyneema tarp.
We just kind of shimmy it all down. We can get that probably maybe around 27 pounds or something like that, 25 each. And on the food front, we're kind of changing up our diets lately. We're messing around with, as you may have heard, a more animal products based diet like the carnivore or keto.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of messing around with that, and we have our own freeze dryers at this point. We all own the Harvest Right freeze dryer, and that has made it so we can be really lightweight with our food.
A lot of options.
It's crazy how much you can control the weight when you take the time to freeze dry mostly everything, including our day snacks and stuff like that. So we're going to see if we can get our nutrition up and the weight down on the food category. But typically, 2 pounds a day, it has been pretty light.
Yep.
There have been many hunts where we're 2.5 pounds a day in food.
Correct.
So I feel like if we can go on a 10-day hunt and get that weight down.
Man, if you could get it down closer to the 15-ish pound mark for 10 days.
Here's another gamble that we're running around with, and that is eating what we kill. So I've been doing the carnivore for about 2 months. Brian has been doing it for
he's at his 90-day mark already.
90 days.
Yep.
So we're very fat adapted, animal fat adapted. We're burning it pretty efficiently. Ryan for sure. And all we eat is, a lot of steak and a lot of high fat steak,
Ooh, a lot of butter.
A lot of butter.
A lot of eggs.
So on this trip, if we're eating a lot of eggs, freeze dried.
Yep.
Some bacon, freeze dried.
Sausage and
then we're eating, some steaks that we freeze dried, which we're experimenting with. It's working quite well.
Yep.
Our weight for the food could be pretty darn low. And here's the thing. If we anticipate killing a bear, which we do,
yep,
we're going into an area where we've seen, 5 big boars on the same ridges year over year at the same time. Like some of them within 200 yards of each other, all just going at it. So we've talked about hiking most, maybe 2/3 of the way in, stashing a lot of our food, maybe even the boats, and then going the rest, another about halfway. So if we kill a bear, we have plenty of food because that's all I eat. I don't do carbs. It's right up our alley. We would just render some fat, cook up some bear meat every day, and we'd be eating fresh meat up there on the mountain, very well adapted to burning fat at this point. Lots of energy coming from it. It's kind of an experiment, but you would cut your weight of your food in half.
Oh, a lot. You could cut it a lot.
While you work on getting that second bear.
Yep.
Now, we've done that. It's a gamble. You might be hungry. You might go hungry for a few days, too.
Yeah.
You ran out of food. You didn't get one down.
That's another thing that, a lot of people don't think about or don't know, but we kind of always do at least like a pretty big once-a-month fast.
Yeah.
And so it's like when we don't go a couple days without food, it's honestly not that big a deal to me or to you. Like, I don't think about it that much.
No.
It's always like I would say the first.
It used to be tough. It's not tough anymore. And I think it's just because where our bodies are efficient at burning whatever we've got on us.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't even feel hungry.
Go a long time without food, but water is a different story.
Water's a must, and so are electrolytes.
Yep.
That's not something, but they don't weigh much. You can manage that, and water's wherever we find it. So we could theoretically experiment with an even lighter load for food, but we'd still have it within striking distance. If we had to make a half-day hike back 4 or 5 miles to grab more food, we would. But why pack it all the way in on a remote hunt if we don't need to?
Yep.
If you're going to be getting something, it's always this balance between weight and performance.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're playing with.
Yeah,
so we want to experiment more with hiking, consuming these foods. How are we? So we're doing a lot of hiking right now and playing with this diet and some of our freeze-dried meals.
And that's exactly
an overnight trip to see how that's the prep we're trying to do to ensure we're successful on this hunt in the spring.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest preparation in planning out these hunts is there's a little bit of a food change as we've talked about, but it takes time. Like we got to be prepping early for all these hunts with the food and stuff like that. Cause it takes a day or two to get your stuff freeze dried and done. So
getting
early preparations,
getting those meals done up. You're eating what you're actually going to be eating on the mountain every day.
Yep.
You're actually experimenting with your performance. And we've got our packs loaded how we think we're going to carry them when we get back there. And we're doing some rucking with those loads around our homes where we live in the mountains. We have that luxury, and testing and going, you know what? this 70-pound load is easy. I'll go 17 miles like this.
Yep.
Or it's like,
Don't even think
dude,
about
it's
it.
85 pounds actually. I don't want to give up more gear. I don't know, man. Maybe we do go halfway, ditch some food.
Yep.
Go the rest. Like, we're just experimenting and playing around with the loadouts and the food. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, to part of it, to be ready. Going back to our notes, getting in shape for the hunt, what we're doing to make sure that we're prepared.
Yep.
We're hiking with the loads. We're experimenting both with the day-to-day load, right? As we're on a hunt, at least as we pack all our expedition, for the whole expedition, the food and everything back in there, the boats,
Yep.
how many miles can we go a day under what load? And then once we get back there, we still want all the juice and the kick to like climb up some mountains and spike out for 2 or 3 days from our main base camp, maybe down low.
Yeah.
Making sure that we have the packs and the load for that kind of day-to-day experience, right? But then here's the trick, the kicker. When we kill a bear, back to our numbers before, let's say you have a 30-pound base weight. Now you've eaten all your food, so you can take 22 pounds off of that.
Yep.
With our setup, you still are coming out at about 50 pounds just to bring your camp back.
Yep.
Right? If you have a rifle and so on. That's another thing. We'll share the rifle load. We'll each have our own handguns because we'll be in Grizz country and so on, but we'll share one rifle.
Yeah.
And because of that, that'll be a little bit lighter. It'll probably be 45 pounds each on the way out.
Yeah.
Or 40. I'm hoping we get down to 40.
I know, you just same here.
40 pounds is our goal for everything.
As our gear setup that has everything we need for that hunt for 10 days.
And as we come out, and we have a little more because we have camera gear. So y'all could get down to 35 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
But let's say it's 45 pounds on the way out. Your bear is going to weigh, depending on the size, right? You debone it, you break it down, you get it in your game bags, you got your skull, you clean that real good so you don't have tons of weight on the skull.
Yep.
And
hide is one of the hardest because it's heavy.
You try to get, if you can get the paws out, that'll save about 8 pounds, 10 pounds of weight.
Get a little bit of the moisture out of it.
So if you can do a little homework on how to split the paws and pull the actual paw out, depending on what you want to do with the fur, with the hide, you could trim that down. And then when you skin it, if you're very good about keeping the fat and the excess meat off the hide as you skin it, you can save a lot of weight. And then if you let it cool and dry out, a lot of that moisture on that hide leaves, and you can get that hide down in weight. But the hide can be super heavy or moderately heavy, depending on how you care for the hide, how you strip it of the fat. Like we were talking to a taxidermist, a tanner this weekend. He said on average, he fleshes 10 pounds of fat and meat and stuff off of a hide, or not on average, but upwards of 10 pounds of weight comes off that hide when he gets it in from these dudes.
Right.
And he was saying, and then if you can pull the paws out, you're leaving like those claws and stuff, but you're pulling the paw out of the pad. There's some heavy bone there. That's adding up to 7 to 10 pounds or something like that as well.
Yeah.
So if you can get yourself familiar with that and do that, that'll save quite a bit of weight, and it depends on what you want to do with it. Of course, I'm not as big onto the rugs as I used to be.
Yeah.
A lot of my bears are just tanned, and you see them. I hang them over chairs. They're on tables. They're kind of around the house. They're just nice to have. I thought about making some sort of quilt out of them someday,
blanket or something,
some kind of square patched set. But when you pull the paws out and then you just tan it, it doesn't matter if they were split up the pad or anything like that. So how particular you are with the pause is a personal thing, depending on what you plan to do with it. So figure that out ahead of time and then act accordingly. So you can get that hide down to a fair bit of weight. And so I would say that, Brad, what do we just discuss those numbers would be? Do you recall
for a bear hide? So like
hide, skull, and boned out.
Yeah, like we've weighed a couple of them, and again with the skull still in there, the hide like not doing a real thorough job. Like we didn't have that big of a pack out.
Yeah,
it was somewhere around like 36 pounds or something like that, I believe, with the hide. And this is about a 6 foot squared out bear. Hide paws still in it. The head was still in it. So, you can cut a lot of weight when you pull that head out. You can cut a lot of weight on those cheek muscles.
Yeah.
There's a big old slab of meat on that bear head if it's a big boar. So, you could spend the time, flesh it out. Like I think you could get that down to
paws out. The paws were in it when we weighed it.
Correct. That's paws, that's hide, that's head, skull in there. And so I think you could get it down to, I really do think you could get it down to that 15-ish mark, 17, maybe 20. I think you can get it below that, but just take some work.
And a boned out bear is about the size, I'd say it's a little bit lighter usually than a boned out mule deer.
Yeah, I would say so too.
But it can vary, dude. Just like with deer, you can get a big old bodied sucker.
True. And it's like, man, a bear that has a bunch of fat on it, it's like, I want to keep that fat
that one I shot with Pedro had more fat on it. 4 or 5 inches of fat on it. And this is just out of hibernation.
Yep.
I mean, this thing was giant.
Yeah.
That happens. Usually not the case. Usually they're not much fat in the spring.
Right.
On these mountain bears, but it varies.
Yeah.
So,
I'm thinking you're somewhere it's up to, I don't know, 80-ish pounds maybe.
I think when you add your hide and your skull and your meat to your 40-pound pack,
yeah,
you're right in that 120s.
I'd agree.
Load.
I'd say there's obviously it always varies at 120, 115 to 130, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think if you don't have camera gear, I think you can be in that 115 range.
Yep.
Or so, which is often where we're at with mule deer.
Yep.
When we debone those, we're eating some of it when we're up there, but a lot of times we can get rid of that lower jaw with the mule deer. We're not with the bear.
And you're not packing the hide on a mule deer unless you're caping it out.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can cut that out.
The hide is in some states in the past, you haven't been required to pack the hide out.
Yep.
Other states you are. Some states you're not required to pack the meat out.
Yep.
Other states you
but,
are.
I mean, it's too precious for us to not pack that meat out. Like the kids love it. I love it.
The
One
meat,
of my top favorite.
Meat, the adventure, the fat, the time outdoors, the time watching bears do bear things.
Yep.
Like, dude, that's the package. If anything, we have been known to leave some hides behind, especially ones that aren't very good.
At least just you're packing out like a patch of hide. You don't need to pack out the whole hide, obviously you got to look at your regulations and per state and see what they are, but
it's state dependent. You cannot leave the hide behind in some states, but you can the meat, which is, I think, backwards.
Right.
You can't eat the hide.
Yep.
Right. And in some cases, the hide's not very prized.
Yeah.
It's just not a very good. It's not a very good hide.
Right.
But the point is, we need to be able to know how far and what kind of terrain, over what kind of terrain we feel comfortable packing 130 pounds.
Yep.
Basically, 130. Hopefully it's less, but I'm coming off of a mountain and I'm going to hike. So it's like, hey, Brad, let's throw on 130 pounds.
Yep.
And let's go for a 3-mile hike.
Now, again, you listen to, take Cam Haynes, for example, and he's like, I train so hard, so the hunting is easy. And this is no joke. I have 3 50-pound salt bags. I put 2 on the back, 1 on the top, and I'll do a 2 1/4 mile ruck with my backpack on.
Yep.
That's kind of my like heavyweight packing out training that I do. It's a 2.25 mile loop around my area I live.
Yeah.
And I do that 150 pounds kind of like at a higher elevated rate to just help me prepare to pack out that 100, 115, 130 pound pack.
Yep.
And not absolutely just die coming out.
Also, for those that have a desk job.
Yep.
I have been standing at a desk since 2008.
Yep. I've been doing it since 2019.
So that's I've done it for more than a decade.
Yeah.
And I'll stand at my desk for 12 hours. It's shocking how many people can barely stand for 2 hours without just being tired.
Yep.
Especially standing still is a lot harder than standing with motion, like walking.
Yep.
It's pretty tough.
It's load bearing. It's load bearing on your joints, your muscles, and It's just a constant pressure.
You think about it, if you're up all day hiking, what are you doing? You're standing on your feet all day. So if you can make that just a nothing burger because you stand at your desk whenever you're not hunting and you are at your desk, you're standing
all day.
Think about all the fitness that you're getting from just standing.
Yeah.
And it adds up year over year, a decade later, 2 decades later. All that standing is going to translate into some strength that you have just by living that way.
Absolutely has to increase your bone density too, and the bone structure
and endurance. It's funny how people come in and they're like, you try it. If you've never done it before, you try to stand all day. People's backs are dying. They're tired. Their feet hurt. They're like ready. After 1 hour, they're like, I need a chair, dude.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't faze me.
No,
nothing.
Not at all. Not at all.
And then in preparation for all the hunts that we do today, I'll throw a 40-pound pack on while I stand there.
Yes.
A couple days a week. Then I'll throw on an 80-pound pack for a few hours while I just stand there and work. And I'll throw on that 120 and just get used to holding that load on my back.
Exactly.
Just feeling the load. There's a whole ton of work being performed just by standing there. And I'll shift weight from one side to the other, but on my feet and kind of shuffle around.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole too. You go down as like, yes, as you're preparing and you're prepping and standing there at your desk all day, but then there's also a posture portion of it that like you have to get used to and almost kind of train yourself that way too to have the correct standing posture. If not, you're gonna create muscle memory.
You got to activate that buttocks. You got to like activate some abs.
Keep the toes pointed straight.
Toes straight. Like there's some things you need to be able to do it, when you're not under load. And as you get stronger and stronger, start adding weight to it.
Yep.
Again, I may not be able to get on tons and tons of hikes, but I'm standing there under load like so often.
Yes.
That I just have a good core amount of strength, even though I have a desk sort of job in the editing of films and podcasts and so on.
When you think about it, your legs, I mean, like you and I are about the same weight. We're about 195 pounds. Stand there for all dang day versus sitting. Look how much more muscle strength you're going to have in your lower legs and start just holding that dead weight.
So some other things that we're doing is, of course, shooting our weapons.
Yep.
We're spending some time behind the rifle. For archery, of course, we're spending time behind the bow. We're putting quite a bit of time into shooting so that we know exactly what we're capable of.
Yep.
And we maximize those opportunities when they arise.
Well, and I've been like,
it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep, it's a no-brainer. And like Ryan and I have been talking a lot. I mean, certain areas you gotta be able to poke out to that 450 somewhere like that. And wind in those mountain high basin areas can be a big factor. And so like this year, I'm packing. I don't know if I'll pack the Kestrel, but I'll be packing a wind meter. Just something new that I've added into the kit, just to increase my odds and my ability to just be that much better and efficient.
Yeah, I mean, Mark was shooting a long shot last year on a bear, and he had a couple of shots, and it was a left-right thing.
Yep.
And he didn't adjust.
Yep.
Certainly not enough. And had he just been able to do a little wind check, windage adjustment, it would have resulted in a completely different outcome.
I'm not a professional sniper. We're not all the greatest at like making sure we get our correct wind reading. And you can guess all day, where if I have it, gives me a much more pinpoint idea of what the wind's doing and stuff. So just something new I added to the kit here.
Before we move on from get further into this, back to the pack.
Yep.
I really feel like getting your pack adjusted and fitted for you.
Absolutely.
And then testing your capabilities. You can, if like you're like, okay, I've got an 8-mile pack out. I've got a 120-pound load. I know that I'm good for 2 miles a day or 3 miles a day under that load.
Before I absolutely wreck myself.
And I can repeat that the next day. I'm not too sore or broken. And I can, if you know your capabilities and your Naismith or your travel speed, you can go, okay, I got to go this far. It's an open trail mostly. I go about 1.5 miles per hour under this load.
Yep.
If I leave here at 6 a.m., I'll be mostly the way, I'll be a few miles down trail.
I kind of know an estimated time.
By this time, I'm going to stop, do a little fishing right there, eat some fish and camp.
Yep.
And I'm going to stay there for a full day, recover, and go out the next day a little bit more. You can do some calculations, and you know what you're capable of. You might go, well, I'm going to try and do this 7-mile day, but you're just not made. You haven't trained, or you're a little older.
Yep.
It's so nice to know your capabilities. And that only comes from sort of experimenting, testing, measuring, training, and seeing where you're at. And you can take someone who's older or not in very good shape, but if you know your capabilities, where you're pretty good, you can accomplish a lot on a hunt.
Yes.
Just might take you a little longer. You might be just a little slower.
Yep. It's pacing yourself, understanding that pacing. And I think another thing with packs too, it's like every pack can be pretty comfortable up to that 60-ish plus pound mark. And then you hear guys like, the pack was just absolutely so brutal,
Yeah.
Put 100 pounds in your pack and see how your pack feels. It may not be the pack for you. I mean, it's obviously hard to go get 5 packs, put 100 pounds in them and test them all out. But if your buddy has a different pack than you have, swap them. Just understand that when you get those heavy loads, like a pack at 60 pounds is not going to perform as well at 100. I've
gone to packs and I'm like, I love this pack. This is my new favorite pack.
Absolutely.
And then I've tried another one. I'm like, oh no, now this is my new favorite pack. And you start to realize over time, if you get your hands on enough different packs, that they are not created equal.
No.
I remember the first time I had been using the Stone Glacier, like 69 and the 7900, and Ryan was too for a long time, and it's a legit pack.
Yep.
And I loved that thing. It was definitely my new favorite.
It sticks to your back.
Yeah.
Up to that whatever poundage, packs the weight very well. Good back design.
I was hiking the Wasatch Mountain Range straight up to the flagpole up here on this one hike, and then back down. It's a grind.
It's a grind. Yep.
And I was doing that hike probably 4 or 5 days a week, and been doing it for a few months. And then Dennis and Joe got me the initial ascent pack, and I grabbed that initial ascent. And what I had been packing was something bulky. I was taking those water coolers.
Yeah, the 5-gallon water cooler
full of water plus some weights.
Yep.
And I was sticking them in the packs, and I was carrying those up the mountain.
I think we were like 90 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, because I didn't just want
a flat to the back.
Weights that were like right against your back.
Mm-hmm.
The distribution of a load sticks out. It's bulky, when you have a whole 10 days of stuff.
Yep.
Hide. So I wanted it to mimic as close to reality as possible, be awkward. And the truth is, like, I took the pack off the Stone and I snapped the frame. when I had that load in it.
Yes.
Set it on the ground and it snapped the two bars. That's when I got the initial ascent. And Stone sent me the straps back, and it wasn't built to have a water cooler in there with weights on the bottom
that
and
angle to crush
and
it,
to be
to
set
break
down
it.
on the ground. So, in fairness to Stone, it never broke on a hunt,
Right.
but it did snap, and I was like, geez, snapped it right in half. And I got the Stone, and I took the same weight and I put it in the Stone, and
the initial ascent,
and I climbed that hill with that new pack, and I immediately felt like, geez, this feels like it's 20 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
And I've been carrying the other load for 3 or 4 months. I put it onto this pack, and I'm like, it's a 20% decrease in felt weight.
Yeah.
Which meant that it just was more efficient on my back than the Stone was. That's just honest to God, the reality.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a surprise. So then I was like, man, I got to play around with this pack more. And I started to add 120 to it. And I'm like, wow, when I got the Stone at about 100, it feels similar to this at 120.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful, right? Then I did my first real hunt with it. And one thing I noticed right away was when we hiked in with about that 70-pound load, Lampers and I were going overland and through some brush and walking across logs. And the mobility that I had with the Stone Glacier, I did not have with the initial ascent.
Right.
I felt like I was working a little harder with the initial ascent than I was with the Stone when I had the lower weight. And I was like, oh gosh, man, I could find myself going, no, I prefer the feel of the Stone if I didn't play with the initial with the heavy loads.
Yeah.
So then I learned to play around with
strap tightness and shoulder harness tightness.
Totally. Because when you have a stiff bag and not a flexible frame, which is more the initial ascent style, it's very stiff.
Like a board.
Yeah.
Against your back.
I could mess around with the shoulder harness, the load lifters, and so on with those lighter loads so that I could maneuver with the pack on my shoulders.
Yeah, you're able to loosen that stuff up, and the way that pack is carrying and distributing the weight
on your hips
or whatever, it allows you to loosen that up a little bit and to be more mobile in the body, not mobile in the pack.
And the load is only around that 70 pounds, so
it's still being carried and performed at a high level.
Yes.
It's not like it all of a sudden starts dragging on your shoulders.
No,
or anything like that.
And when I realized that I just could loosen her up a little bit and get a similar feel to how I felt with the Stone, I learned to not fight the pack.
Yep.
And then I was like, well, now I have the best of both because I've learned to wear it when it doesn't have a super heavy load so that it feels good and nimble. And just because of the design, it works fine. It works great. And then when I need that heavyweight capability, it is there for me, and it saves my lumbar.
Doesn't wear down the body near as much. And I think too,
my hips and the right lumbar for some reason would always burn out in the other packs.
Same here. I ran a different pack for a long time. That's more of an external frame pack. Mm-hmm. And I packed some heavy loads on that sucker. Like, loved it. Now bag design, whatever, wasn't as great, but jumped into and this is no dig on Stone or any other backpack company at all. It's just, again, everybody is so different on boots and packs and how it feels in your body, setup, whatever. But I had the same problem, and I have such a short torso that when I would get into that other pack where I needed my heavy weight to be, it would be a little too high. And so I wanted to tip over on my head, even at like 70, 80 pounds.
Yeah, the Stone was the worst pack for you because of your torso. So it's narrow and tall.
It's narrow and tall.
Which was fine for Lampers and I, but it was a nightmare.
No, I need a shorter and wider distributed backpack. And I mean, my back, I've never had it hurt so bad. Again, it's not a dig on them. It's just my body type, my setup, my back, my lumbar. I would feel wrecked off of a 10-day hunt.
But that's why it's important,
Yes.
like we said, to try some packs. We were just to be straight up, we were just at the bear show, and
the bear tour.
We have a buddy there, and he keeps trying the initial ascent, and unless it's got a heavy load in it, he's like, dude, it just makes my back tight. And he's been down to the shop a couple times with Dennis and Joe, and he's like, our buddy Jack, and he's like, dude.
And I think I have hopefully his issue solved, because in a way I was experiencing a little bit of the same thing when I went to the initial ascent.
Yeah.
And I'm built a little different than most people. Like, I have gigantic legs and a giant butt.
Yeah.
And so where most people kind of need that big, heavy, thick lumbar support, I ended up taking out
a couple of
the lumbar pads, the layers. Problem solved. Like, I had zero issues on it driving so hard into my hips, and
interesting.
So you got to play with it. You got to play with that stuff before a hunt.
For me, I went to Joe and Dennis and said, I need more on the lumbar. This thing doesn't have enough, and it's sliding off my butt, my back end. I need more. They added that, and it helped a little, but I wasn't completely sold the first year I was using it. So we kept playing with the fit. Then they got me a belt.
Yep.
That was the large. And, I wouldn't normally I don't have a particularly large waist. It wraps all the way around.
Yeah. And see, and I run a medium, and we're like the same waist size and pants or whatever, but just a different structure.
I even talked about it early in the show. Hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, head over to Peaks Equipment and check out what they have. Use the code GRIDDY over there and you will save. They've got the trekking poles. They've got their brand new sleeping bag that they just dropped. Peaks has a teepee. They have gaiters. They have a headlamp. All premium products for the outdoorsman. Head over there. Use the code GRIDDY. That's peaksequipment.com. Now let's get back to the show. Man, whenever I just can't get the fit to repeat.
Yeah.
So as soon as I put the pack on, the initial ascent, and I get it buckled down, I'm shifting. As soon as I take it off and put it back on, I'm trying to find the fit again around my waist, chasing it. It doesn't just buckle on and then it's good. Well, it turned out for me, I needed that waist belt to be longer.
Yep.
And as soon as it wrapped all the way around, it was like, it goes on like smooth, fits great. It's never a chase. I just buckle and go.
Yeah. And again, you have to play for, and that's what Initial has done. What's been great. There's the adjustability of the lumbar, the hip belt, the options, because, Ryan's bigger than both you and I, but he's still say he's in a medium hip belt, just like I am. You're in a large, and it's so much adjustability to you have to get a pack to really fit.
Yeah. So this early season stuff, you put, heavy loads in and you test a few different packs. And I've been around people who it's sort of like boots, where packs are person dependent. So even though we love the Initial and we're pretty much sold that is just a superior pack right now.
Yep.
There are dudes who absolutely love certain packs, and it seems that for them, it's built for them.
Yes.
And so I would just say, that's why it's important to get out there now and start playing around with with your gear, your packs, and your fit and your loads, and make that part of your preparation, but your fitness as well.
Yes.
And maximize the efficiency of that thing.
Find what works for you.
The way that I would get tired on one side, it caused me to work so hard to balance. Be careful how I loaded the stone.
Yes.
I'd make sure I had my weight on each side exactly perfected.
It's kind of a double-edged sword there, because, you got a 7-pound rifle on the right side, you got your spotter on the other side, camera, whatever. But then as soon as you would take the rifle off the right side, you just took 7 pounds, 8 pounds, whatever.
Because you're going to carry, because you might kill something.
Yep. Off that side. Then all of a sudden now you're like, you
can be. And that's the thing. One of the other things
that big time.
You notice with the initial ascent right away, you don't
feel that.
It distributes the weight so well. You can have it completely overweight on one side, and it just carries it the same.
Yep.
It's very, very uncanny after switching from one to the next.
For
So
sure.
anyway, big tangent there, but that is.
I think it's important, though. It really is. Getting used to that pack pre-hunt.
So the other thing that we're doing is we're checking all the gear. Okay, are there any holes in anything? Checking the rafts, checking the air pads.
Yes.
Checking all the equipment to make sure
your stove has all its pieces.
Making sure that we have all our boots soaked in bear grease for the leather and even the synthetic. I use it on that as well.
Yep.
We're checking to make sure all the guns are oiled, all that kind of stuff. So, that's common sense, but a lot of guys might find themselves out there and their gas stove doesn't work.
Making sure you got enough fire starter. That's a big one. A couple different types of fire starting gear.
Yep.
Just some things to look at.
Yep.
First aid
Freshen
stuff.
up all the other stuff like your lighter that might have run out and things like that.
First aid kit you might have used, whatever.
Bear protection.
Yes.
We've got the handguns, we've got the holsters, we've got the setup how we want on our person,
and practice.
And then it's a practice. We're shooting the handguns, making sure we have bear loads, that we know what we're doing. If we're in an emergency, that we can handle ourselves.
Yep. Absolutely.
So take some time to go to the range or in your backyard, wherever you're at, and get familiar with your equipment, your gun, and be prepared for defending yourself if you find yourself in a dangerous situation.
One thing I would add as your pre-training, pre-season prep, hiking with the pack, doing that, put all your gear on. Put your bino harness on. Put your pistol in your holster with your backpack, because that's what you're going to be wearing every day in the field. So there's no reason not to be wearing that as you're doing your pre-hiking.
I feel compelled to mention that because Ryan's going to mention it, I'm sure. He beat me in a tank race. Okay. We drove a tank, like an army tank, and he beat me. It was a 4-second win.
Hey, you know what I saw? I saw some video, and I got to hand it to Brian over here, Ryan. He was more fluent in his tank driving ability.
Right? Like, I mean, I stayed on the track. Ryan cheated and drove off the course. I was like, dude.
He was faster.
But he did beat me. However, I beat him on the handgun thing, which he would never voluntarily admit. And not just by a little. It was like 14 out of 20 for me. I think Ryan got 4
or 5, 6, something like that.
Something like that out of 20 shots. So, now he'll blame the handgun, or I don't know. I really haven't got a sufficient response from Ryan in why that was the case. But I'm a gunslinger. I told him ahead of time.
The whole tank thing, Jack Carr, all those guys, all the military guys, it's like smooth is fast is smooth, not fast and rough. No.
Well, it's funny because the guy told us to run this route. I thought we kind of had to stay in his tracks and on his route. Because he's like, we don't want to run over rocks and mess with the tension on the tracks on the tanks. It's hard on them, So I thought, okay, so I followed where he went in the exact tracks. Dude, Brian just like shaved off like the connection point on the track. He comes across and he turns a hard right onto the road. Ryan just shaved off the whole corner of the route. I'm like, could we do that? I mean, it is a tank.
Next time they need to set up cones.
Dude, Ryan is so competitive. Whatever it takes to win,
and everybody loves it. Like, we're all so competitive. Fun. Like glassing to
my point is,
whatever.
When people think that handguns are, and Ryan doesn't think this. Ryan's deadly with his own gun.
Yes.
I've seen him shoot.
Correct.
But it just goes to show when you've got a handgun, you want to practice with it.
Familiarize
It is
yourself.
shocking when someone pulls up. They get on target and they unload a clip and they hit the thing twice.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yep.
Like, it is not what people think if you haven't spent some time behind it.
You want that sucker to be just an extension of your hand, and that's where the practice comes in and understanding, it shoots different with a 120 grain bullet when you throw a 220 grain bear load in there, that's obviously a drastic change. But
you want to get comfortable with what you have. I do have a Kimber Camp Guard.
Yep.
1911, 10 mil.
Yep.
That thing just shoots for me. I put 1,000 rounds through it. and it's a little heavier.
Yeah.
I've shot the Glock.
Yeah, I got the Glock 29. Ryan has the Smith & Wesson M&P 10 mil.
Yeah, and it's like when you get something that you're really comfortable with and you know you're accurate and you can shoot, it's hard to switch away from that.
Yes.
I do want a lighter option, but when I've sat there and shot the two, it's like one I never miss, and the other one I'm kind of here and there.
Grouping is elsewhere.
And I think heavier often is a little easier to keep on target than lighter.
Yep. And it's all preference.
You just got to practice.
A lot of guys will say, go a revolver, but man, they're heavy and they kick.
I think we're all 10 mil.
You acquire your target. It's hard to reacquire with a barrel gun,
Yeah.
Versus a slide. Just preference.
So things we're doing to ensure spring bear hunting success. We talked about fitness. That's on the list. We kind of covered that a little bit.
Another
kind of goes without saying,
yeah,
but
we're doing burpees and stuff all the time, honestly.
Yeah.
Push-ups, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to add in there.
Honestly, I think we kind of hit it. One thing that we got on the list, it's kind of random, is rope for hanging food.
And that's, I think we didn't mention it in the preparation, but that's as you're building your kits again, restoring your first aid kit, restoring your lighters, your fire starter. A rope is an absolute, you use it for anything and everything.
Especially in bear country.
Grizz country, for sure.
We're constantly hanging rafts. We're hanging food.
Yep.
We're hanging camp. Everything gets up in the air and away from us. And having the right kind of, when we got llamas, we just throw it in the panniers. But when we take off, we'll throw them in our stuff sacks, and you'll want a big enough stuff sack that you can just hang your gear, keep it up away from where the bears might just wreck it.
Yep. And then where we were possibly floating out on the trip, so we're both packing rafts. Another place you can save with a buddy. Maybe you're not rafting out; you're just rafting across the river. Pack a little more rope. It's much lighter than a raft, and you can shuttle that raft back and forth. One guy crosses, you have a rope attached to it, pull the raft back, and then you that guy crosses.
Yeah, we've tried that, and I have yet to have that work.
It takes a lot more time, especially if you're usually in the moment to go get a bear.
Usually the water is too fast and too far.
Yep.
If we are in the spring, and if it warrants a raft, usually that means you can't just tow the boat back real easily. But we've done it, but it's got to be a pretty narrow river and slow moving.
It is an option. Just throwing it out there.
I think the better option, if you've seen those Meat Eater episodes with Remy Warren and Ranella when they're hunting tar up in New Zealand.
Yep.
The way that you want to do that is you want to stake your rope out on one end, float across, and then affix the other end.
Yeah, as a pulley system
As a pulley system.
Yep.
And then that is just stretched fully across the river.
Yep.
The one guy goes across, he does the other tie off, and then on the pulley system, he just rigs, or it's really a carabiner. He just sets it on diagonal, and as the water going with the flow of the current, it'll just pull the boat across,
rides above it,
rides it down the line, and to the other side.
And it saves your raft because you have a super fast current. Saves your raft from drifting into a pile of logs or sticks.
But it can just
popping.
Go back and forth very quickly for each person.
Yep.
If you set up that ferry system.
Yep.
You just want to make sure you always keep a line attached to the raft in case it were to get stuck or come off the track. Anyway, great film. I haven't actually done it. But I've done a lot of rope work when I was younger for climbing, a lot of belay, rock climbing, and did a lot of tree climbing with Prussic knots and so on. I've spent some time around rope. You certainly could make it work, but a lot of the rope we're bringing is 550 cord. It's not really the rope for the job for that, but you could. But we typically just bring those 5-pound rafts. We often, despite the extra 5 pounds, we often bring each our own when we're hunting those rivers because we don't want to take the time to ferry.
Right.
Often, with Brady Pedro, myself, and Ryan, we could like ferry back and forth. Like when I did kill my bear, we had one raft, and Ryan basically ferried everybody one at a time across, went back, got the other guy, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
90% of the time, though, we each have our own boat. We shoot across quickly and just climb up the other side.
Yeah.
And
there is such an
some of that's for a little bit of floating as well.
Yep.
Just in case we want to float a half mile and get out. We each have our own boat.
But a lot of that springtime bear hunting, they're not just stuck in one place, and your time is a factor, and being able to just get everybody across at one time.
It's a race to get to the bear before he gets away. Like speed is of the essence in the spring.
That's another thing. Practicing a raft. It's like a backpacking raft is not easy to use if you're unfamiliar with it.
We've all spent a lot of time on the water. I've spent a lot of time rafting when I was young, and as I grew up, I'm no stranger to paddling. But I've been with dudes who never done it.
Right.
It scares me.
Yeah.
And they get in the boat and they start paddling, and they're just like, they don't know.
They're not used to how it
tippiness.
Feels.
They've never been in canoes.
Yep.
I remember. Yeah, I have some. Yeah. Anyway, folks, I think that sort of gives you some ideas, maybe gets the wheels turning for you on your spring bear, the things you can do to ensure you're successful this season, especially if you're heading out like us. Leave us some comments in the description field of our YouTube channel, Rumble channel below, and we'll try to get back to you there. And if you like the show and you want to support us, check out Stealthy Hunter for your nutrition, supplements. They got some great, excellent, healthy products over there. They got bone broth protein for you protein people. We mix it up post-workout, solid.
Yes.
Also check out their glassing pads and rifle covers. And if you need trekking poles, if you need a hot tent, if you need gaiters, if you need the best backcountry headlamp you can get, if you need a sweet sleeping bag, all of that can be found at Peaks Equipment.
Now's the time, because inventory issues can always be a problem.
They're often out of stock, so check out Peaks Equipment and get it there. If they don't have it there, use the code GRIDDY, by the way, at both Stealthy and at Peaks, and that helps us. We get commission on every purchase you guys make over there.
Yep.
And that helps us keep producing these shows. The other one is Go Hunt. Sometimes when Peaks doesn't have it in stock, flip on over there to Go Hunt. They often do have they have a retailer for a lot of Peaks equipment product and Stealthy. So you can go over there, and if you use the code GRIDDY over there at the gear shop, the Go Hunt gear shop, you get points as well. So you'll save and you get points. So that's a great place to go as well. I think that's it.
Get your scouting in. Another one's Treeline Pursuits. Your scouting, no joke. Yeah, now's the time for scouting season bears.
Yeah, Treeline Academy
tag application.
Treeline Academy will teach you how to e-scout. Mm-hmm. Kind of do the hunt preparation, ensuring your success. All that part of it we didn't really cover.
No,
because it's really a course that you need to take.
But now is the time.
Now is the time. Go to Treeline Academy. Use the code GRIDDY over there. You'll save. It's about $100, I think, for the course with the code.
Yeah, I think it's like $149 for all the toolkits and the course. You can buy individual toolkits. Just go to his website. You can check it all out.
I think you save like 20%.
Yeah,
with code GRIDDY, and then you can take that. It's like 30-hour course or plus, but
it's good.
Just go to the sections you're interested in. Take it in a couple hours here and there throughout the week, and get yourself. It'll change your life.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're wrapping up. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Stay gritty.